Hello. Um, so tonight I'm gonna read chapter 1 and chapter 2 of Abarat by Clive Barker. And these two chapters are pretty short, so I think I can do them without going too far, to making too long of a video. So I'm gonna do that. What I want to warn about though is there are a couple of things that might, be triggery to people. And so I figured I should warn for that. There's a it's at the moment it's going to be implied that Candy's father is an abusive alcoholic. So, it's if you think that's going to bother you tonight, then just don't watch. Another thing is in the second chapter, there's going to be a mention of suicide, and it's not going to be gone into too much detail, but still, if you don't feel like you can take that tonight, then skip it. So, anyway, with that being said, I'm going to begin room 19. Apparently not yet. Who's that towel? Hello? Hello? I don't know what the hell that was. I'm gonna, maybe it was like some possum or something that comes around here, because we get a lot of wild animals fucking around by our house. So, hopefully with no more interruptions, I am going to, I'm going to start reading Chapter 1, Room 19. The project Miss Schwartz had set for Candy's class was simple enough. Everyone had a week to bring into school 10 interesting facts about the town in which they all lived. Something about the history of Chicken Town would be fine, she said, or if students preferred, facts about the way the town was today. Which meant, of course, the same old stuff about chicken farming in modern Minnesota. Candy had done her best. She'd visited the school library and scoured the shelves for something, anything, about the town that to her sounded vaguely interesting. There was nothing. Nada. Zip. Zero. There was a library on Naughton Street that was 10 times the size of the school library, so she went there. Again, she scanned the shelves. There were a few books about Minnesota that mentioned the town, but the same boring facts were repeated in volume after volume. Chicken Town had a population of 36,793, and it was the biggest producer of chicken meat in the state. One of the books, having mentioned the chickens, described the town as otherwise undistinguished. So you gotta feel kind of bad for Candy here. Perfect, Candy thought. I live in a town that is otherwise undistinguished. Well, that was fact number 1. She only needed 9 more. We live in the most boring town in the country, she complained to her mother, Melissa, when she returned home. I can't find anything worth writing about for Miss Schwartz. Melissa Quackenbush was in the kitchen making meatloaf. The kitchen door was closed so as not to disturb Candy's father, Bill. He was in a beer-induced slumber in front of the television, and Candy's mother wanted to keep it that way. The longer he stayed unconscious, the easier it was for everyone in the house, including Candy's brothers, Don and Ricky, to get on with their lives. Nobody mentioned this aloud. It was a silent understanding between the members of the household. Life was more pleasant for everyone when Bill Quackenbush was asleep. Why do you say it's boring? Melissa asked as she seasoned the meatloaf. Just take a look out there, Candy said. Melissa didn't bother, but that was only because she knew the scene outside the window all too well. Beyond the grimy glass was the family's chaotic backyard, the shin-high grass browned by the heat wave that had come unexpectedly in the middle of May, the inflatable pool they'd bought the previous summer and had never deflated and stowed away, now a dirty circle of red and white plastic at the far end of the yard. Beyond the collapsed pool was the broken fence, and beyond the fence, another yard in not much better shape, and another, until eventually the yards ended, and the streets too, and the empty grasslands began. I know what you want for your project, she said. Oh, said Candy, going to the fridge and taking out a soda. What do I want? You want something weird, Melissa said, putting the meat into the baking tin and thumbing it down. You've got a little morbid streak in you, just like your Grandma Frances. She used to get to the funerals of complete strangers. She did not, Candy said with a laugh. She did, I swear. She loved anything like that. You get it from her. You certainly don't get it from me or your dad. Oh, well, that really makes me feel welcome. You know what I mean, Candy's mother protested. So you don't think Chicken Town is boring, Candy said. There are worse places, believe me, Melissa said. At least it's got a bit of history. Not much of one. Not according to the books I looked at, Candy said. You know who you should talk to? Melissa said. Who? Norma Lipnick. You remember Norma. She and I used to work at the Comfort Tree Hill together. Vaguely, Candy said. All kinds of strange things happen at hotels. And the Comfort Tree has been around since... Oh, I don't know. You ask Norma. She'll tell you. Is she the one with the white blonde hair who always wore too much lipstick? Melissa looked up at her daughter with a little smile. Don't you go saying anything rude to her now. I wouldn't do a thing like that. I know how these things slip out with you. Mom, I'll be really polite. Good, you do that. She's the assistant manager there now, so if you're real nice to her and you ask the right questions, I bet she'll give you something that for your project that nobody else in class will have. Like what? You go over there and ask her. She'll remember you. Ask her to tell you about Henry Merkett. Who's Henry Merkett? You go and ask her. It's your project. You should get out there and do some legwork, like a detective. Is there much to detect? Candy said. You'd be surprised. She was. The first surprise was Norma Lipnick herself, who was no longer the tacky woman that Candy remembered, her hair teased high and her dress too short. In the 8 years or so since Candy had seen Norma, she had let her hair go naturally gray. The bright red lipstick was a thing of the past, as were the short dresses. But once Candy had introduced herself, Norma's new professional reserve was soon cast to the winds, and the warm, gossipy woman Candy remembered emerged. Lord, how you have grown, Candy, she said. I never see you around, you or your mother. Is she doing okay? Yeah, I guess. I heard your dad lost his job at the chicken factory. Had a little problem with the beer, so I was told. Candy didn't have time to agree or deny this. You know what? I think that sometimes people should be given second chances. If you don't give people second chances, how are they ever going to change? I don't know, Candy said, feeling uncomfortable. Men, Norma said. You stay away from them, darling. They are more trouble than they're worth. I'm on my third marriage, and I don't give them more than 2 months. Oh, anyway, you didn't come over here to listen to me chatting on. So how can I help you? I've got this project to do about Chicken Town, Candy explained. It was set by Miss Schwartz, but who always gives us these projects that are only fit for 6th graders. Besides, she doesn't like me very much. Oh, don't let her get you down, honey. There's always one who makes your life hell. You'll be out of school soon enough. What are you going to do then? Work over at the factory? Candy felt a great weight settle on her shoulders, imagining that horrendous prospect. I hope not, she said. I want to do something more with my life. But you don't know what? Candy shook her head. Don't worry, it'll come to you. Norma said. I hope it does, because you don't want to get stuck here. No, I don't. I really don't. So you've got a project about Chicken Town? Yes. And Mom said there was some things that went on in the hotel I should find out about. She said you'd know what she was talking about. Did she indeed? Said Norma with a teasing little smile. She said to ask you about Henry Murkett. Yes, Henry Murkett. Poor old Henry. What else did she say? Did she tell you about room 19? No, she didn't mention anything about a room. She just gave me the name. Well, I can tell you the tale, Norma said, but I don't know if Murkett's story is the kind of thing your Miss Schwartz will be looking for. Why not? Well, because it's rather dark, Norma said. Tragic, in fact. Candy smiled. Well, Mom says I'm morbid, so I'll probably like it. Morbid, huh? All right, said Norma. I guess I should tell you the whole darn thing. You see, Chicken Town used to be called Murkett. Really? That wasn't in any of the books about Minnesota. You know how it is. There's the history that finds its way into the books, and there's the history that doesn't. And Henry Murkett is part of the history that doesn't. Huh. Candy was fascinated. Remembering what her mother had said about doing some detective work, she took out her notebook and began to write in it. Murkett. History we don't know. So the town was named after Henry Murkett? No, said Norma. It was named after his grandfather Wallace Murkett. Why did they change it? I guess Chicken Town fits, doesn't it? This place has got more damn chickens than it has people. And sometimes I think people care more about the chickens than they do about each other. My husband works over at the family, so that's all I ever hear from him and his friends. Chicken talk? Chickens, chickens, and more darn chickens. Norma glanced at her watch. You know I don't got much time to show you room 19 today. I've got a big party of folks coming in. Can we do this another day? I've got to have this report in by tomorrow morning. You kids always leaving things to the last minute, Norma said. Well, okay. We'll do this quickly. But you be sure to jot it all down, because I won't have time to say anything twice. I'm ready, said Candy. Norma took her passkey from her pocket. Linda, she said to the woman working at the front desk, I'm going up to room 19. The woman frowned. Really? What for? The question went unanswered. I won't be more than 10 minutes, Norma said. She led Candy away from the reception area, talking as she went. This is the new part of the hotel we're in right now, she explained. It was built in 1964. But once we step through here, she led Candy through a pair of double doors, we're in the old hotel. It used to be called the High Seas Hotel. Don't ask me why. Even if Candy hadn't been told that there was a difference between the portion of the hotel she'd been in and the part that Norma had brought her into, she would have known it. The passageways were narrower here and less well lit. There was a sour smell of age in the air, as if somebody had left the gas on. We only put people in the old part of the hotel if all the other rooms are full, and that only happens when there's a chicken buyers' conference. Even then, we tried never to put people in room 19. Why's that? Well, it's not that it's haunted, exactly, though there have been stories. Personally, I think all that stuff about the afterlife is nonsense. You get one life, and you'd better make the best of it. My sister got religion last year, and she's shaping up for sainthood, I swear. Norma had led Candy to the end of a passageway, where there was a narrow staircase illuminated by a single lamp. It cast a yellowish light that did nothing to flatter the charmless wallpaper and the cracking paintwork. Candy almost remarked that it was no wonder the management kept this part of the hotel out of the sight of the guests, but she bit her tongue, remembering what her mother had said about keeping less courteous thoughts to herself. Up the creaking stairs they went. They were steep. I should stop smoking, Norma remarked. It'll be the death of me. There were 2 doors at the top. One was room 17. The other was room 19. Norma handed the passkey to Candy. You want to open it? Norma said. Sure. Candy took the key and put it in the lock. You have to jiggle it around a little. Candy jiggled, and after a little work, the key turned, and Candy opened the ill-oiled door of room 19. Chapter 2. What Henry Murkett Left Behind. It was dark inside the room. the air still and stale. "Why don't you go ahead and open the drapes, honey?" Norma said, taking the key back from Candy. Candy waited a moment for her eyes to become accustomed to the gloom, then she tentatively made her way across the room to the window. The thick fabric of the drapes felt greasy against her palms, as though they hadn't been cleaned in a very long time. She pulled. The drapes moved reluctantly along dust and dirt-clogged rails. The glass Candy found herself looking through was as filthy as the fabric. "How long has it been since anybody rented the room?" Candy said. "Actually, I can't remember if there's been anybody in it since I've been at the hotel," Norma said. Candy looked out the window. The view was no more inspiring to the senses or the soul than the view out of the kitchen window of 34 Followell Street, her home. Immediately below the window was a small courtyard at the back of the hotel, which contained 5 or 6 garbage cans, filled to overbrimming, and the skeletal remains of last year's Christmas tree, still wearing its shabby display of tinsel and artificial snow. Beyond the yard was Lincoln Street, or so Candy guessed. The journey through the hotel had completely disoriented her. She could see the tops of cars above the wall of the yard, and a discount drugstore on the opposite side of the street, its doors chained and padlocked, its shelves bare. So, the town isn't doing so good. The main thing here is chickens. Her life kinda sucks. "So," said Norma, calling Candy's attention back to room 19, "this is where Henry Murkett stayed. Did he come to the hotel often?" "To my knowledge," Norma said, "he only came once, but I'm not really sure about that, so don't quote me." Candy could understand why Henry would not have been a repeat visitor. The room was tiny. There was a narrow bed against the far wall, and a chair in the corner with a small black television perched on it. In front of it was a second chair, on which was perched an overfilled ashtray. "Some of our employees come up here when they have half an hour to spare to catch up on the soap operas," Norma said, by way of explanation. "So they don't believe the room's haunted?" "Put it this way, honey," Norma said. Whatever they believe, it doesn't put them off of coming up here." "What's that, though?" Candy said, pointing to a door. "Look for yourself," Norma said. Candy opened the door and stepped into a minuscule bathroom that had not been cleaned in a very long time. In the mirror above the filthy sink she met her own reflection. Her eyes looked almost black in the murk of this little cell, and her dark hair needed a cut. But she liked her own face, even in such an unpromising light. She had her mother's smile, open and easy, and her father's frown, the deep, troubled frown that Bill Quackenbush wore in his beer dreams, and of course her odd eyes, the left dark brown, the right blue, though the mirror reversed them. "When you're quite finished admiring yourself," Norma said. Candy closed the bathroom door and went to her note-taking to cover her embarrassment. "There is no wallpaper on the walls of room 19, she wrote. Just plaster painted a dirty white. One of the 4 walls had a curious abstract pattern on it, which was faintly pink. All in all, she could not have imagined a grimmer or more uncomfortable place. "So what can you tell me about Henry Murkett?" she asked Norma. "Not that much," the woman replied. "His grandfather was the founding father of the town. In fact, we're all us here because Wallace Murkett decided he had enough life on the trail. The story goes that his horse upped and died on him in the middle of the night, so they had no choice but to settle down right here in the middle of nowhere." Candy smiled. There was something about this little detail which absolutely fit with all she knew about her hometown. "So Chickentown exists because Wallace Murkett's horse died?" she said. Norma seemed to get the bitter joke. "Yeah," she said. "I guess that about sums things up, doesn't it? But apparently Henry Murkett was very proud of having his family's name on the town. It was something he used to boast about. Then they changed it. Yes, well, I'll get to that in a moment. Really, poor Henry's life was a series of calamities toward the end. First his wife, Diamanda, left him. Nobody knows where she went. And then sometime in December 1947, the town council decided to change the name of the town. Henry took it very badly. On Christmas Eve, he checked into the hotel, and the poor man never checked out again." Candy had guessed something like that was coming, but even so it made the little hairs on the nape of her neck prickle to hear Norma say it. "He died in this room?" Candy said softly. "Yes." "How? A heart attack?" Norma shook her head. "Oh, no," said Candy, beginning to put the things together. "He killed himself?" "Yes, I'm afraid so." The room suddenly felt a little smaller, if that were possible. The corners, despite the sun that found its way through the dirty glass, a little darker. "That's horrible," Candy said. "You'll learn, honey," Norma said. "Love can be the best thing in life, and it can be the worst. The absolute worst." Candy kept her silence. For the first time she saw how sad Norma's face had become in the years since they'd last met, how the corners of her mouth were drawn down and her brow deeply etched with lines. "But it wasn't just the love that broke Henry Murkett's heart," Norma said. "It was the fact that they changed the name of the town," Candy said. "Yes, that's right. After all, it was his family name. His name. His claim to that little bit of immortality, if you like. When that was gone, I guess he didn't think he had anything left to live for." "Poor man," Candy said, echoing Norma's earlier sentiments. "Did he leave a note? I mean, a suicide note?" "Yes, of a kind," "Yes, of a kind. As far as I can gather, he said something about waiting for his ship to come in." "What do you mean by that?" Candy said, jotting the phrase down. "Well, he was probably drunk and a little crazy, but he has something in the back of his head about ships in the sea." "That's strange," Candy said. "It gets stranger," Norma said. She went to the small table beside the bed and opened the drawer. It was a copy of Gideon's Bible and a strange object made of what looked like brass. She took it out. "According to the stories," she said, "this is the only object of any worth he had with him." "What is it?" Norma handed it to Candy. It was heavy and etched with numbers. There was a moving part that was designed to line up with the numbers. "It's a sextant," Norma said. Candy looked blank. "What's a sextant?" "It's something sailors use to find out where they are when they're out at sea. I don't know quite how it works, but when you line it up with the stars somehow and," she shrugged, "you find out where you are." "And he had this with him. As I say, according to the stories, this very one." "Wouldn't the police have taken it?" Candy said. "You would think so, but as long as I've been working in the hotel, that thing has been here in that drawer, beside the Gideon's Bible. Henry Murkett's sextant." And on page 22, we get a picture of Henry Murkett. One of the things I feel I should mention is that Clive Barker also did all of the work for all the artwork for this book. "Huh," said Candy, not at all sure what to make of any of this now. She handed the object back to Norma, who carefully, even a little reverently, returned it to its place and slid the drawer closed. "So that and the note were all he left?" Candy asked. "No," said Norma. "He left something else." "What?" "Look around you," Norma replied. Candy looked around. What was there here that could have belonged to Henry Murkett? The furniture? Surely not. The age-worn rug under her feet? Perhaps, but it was unlikely. The lamp? No. So what did he leave? There weren't any pictures on the walls, so... "Oh, wait a minute," she said, looking at the stains on the wall. "Not these." Norma just looked at her, raising a perfectly plucked eyebrow. "Those?" Candy said. "No matter how many coats of paint the workmen put on that wall, the stains show through." Candy went closer to the wall, examining the marks. A part of her, the part that her morbid grandmother could take credit for, wanted to ask Norma the obvious question. How had the stains got up there? Had he shot himself or used a razor? But there was another part that preferred not to know. "Horrible," she said. "That's what happens when people realize their lives aren't what they dreamed they'd be," Norma said. She glanced at her watch. "Oh, Lord, look at the time. I've got to get going. That's the story of Henry Murkett." "What a sad man," Candy said. Well, I guess all of us are waiting for our ships to come in, one way or another, Nirma said, going to the door and letting Candy out onto the gloomy landing. Some of us still live in hope, she said with a half-hearted smile. But you have to, don't you? And with that, she closed the door on the room where Henry Murkett had breathed his last. And that was a bit longer than I expected. I'll keep it to one chapter video. Sorry for the little interruption at the beginning. And I will probably have the next video up in a couple of days. I don't want to spam you guys with just video after video. So, I hope you enjoyed it, and see you next time.